if you don't act on your convictions, then you won't progress as far as you want. So we want to get as far as we can in this life when we do die. So we need to act on them now. But then sometimes what really happens is that they are tested when there is something important happening. I want to tell you two stories to illustrate this. And one was, there was, in the university in South Carolina, there was a professor of philosophy who was an adamant atheist. And he taught a required course. So everybody had to take his course. And so in the classroom, there would be 300 people at a time. And he would spend the whole semester, 3 months, proving that God couldn't exist. And nobody much ever argued with him. A few people would a little bit, but his logic was so impeccable and so well thought out and so forceful that most of the time nobody said much of anything. And so this went on for 20 years. And at the end of every semester, he would do the same thing. He would say, now, if anybody still believes there is a God, stand up. And nobody would stand up. And he said, because anybody who believes in God is a fool. And if God could prove himself, then he would stop this piece of chalk from breaking when it hits the floor. But he can't even do that. And so at some point, a freshman enrolled, and he was a young man and he was a Christian. He had a very, very deep faith in God. And he was really worried because he had heard about this professor. He'd heard about what the professor did on the last day of the class. And so every day during that 3 months, every morning he prayed to God. He said, God, give me the courage to stand up. Give me the courage not to care what anybody says, and to stand up against this, and to prove my faith, and prove that my faith is strong, I hope. And so, the semester went on. At the last day, true to form, the professor said, if there's anyone in this room that believes in God, stand up. And the young man stood up, and all 300 people looked at him. And the professor said, you fool, if God exists, then he will keep this piece of chalk from breaking when it hits the floor. And he started to drop the piece of chalk, and it slipped out of his fingers, and it hit the cuff of his shirt. It hit his shirt, it hit his pants, rolled down his pants, it landed on his shoe, and then rolled off onto the floor, unbroken. And the professor, just his jaw dropped, and then he looked at the young man, and he ran out of the lecture hall. So the young man got up, and he went to the front of the room, and for half an hour he shared with 300 students his faith in God. So he had the courage, he stood up. Now, there's another part to that. That's not only courage to your convictions, but I was thinking about this. So why did that happen then? It didn't happen any other time. Because nobody was praying. Nobody was asking God for his help. I mean, there for sure would have been other Christians in that class, but nobody was praying as that young man was praying. Because, you see, God doesn't help us unless we ask. You have to ask first. He's very, very polite. He doesn't want to barge into your life. He doesn't want to take over. He doesn't want to make you do anything. No, instead, he waits until you ask. And so that was what was happening, is that young man was asking with great, great fervor, and God came. God proved himself. So see, that's what we need to do all the time. Keep that in mind.